let's talk about how to make an acrostic. So what is an acrostic puzzle? This is it. Sometimes it is called an anacostic puzzle. So the acrostic puzzle is named for the acrostic poem, which if you've never seen an acrostic poem, I could probably bring that up on Wikipedia. But the idea is it's a poem where the first letters of every line spell out a word or a phrase. So to differentiate the acrostic poem from the acrostic puzzle, sometimes you'll see these called anacrostics, and which stands for an anagram acrostic, which is really, if you think about it, what this is. So what is an anacrostic or an acrostic puzzle? It looks like this. You have essentially two sections of the puzzle. The top section is the quote. As you can see up here, this is the quote. Generally, it is an interesting or funny, somehow, let's say interesting is the most important part. It is a quote about something. In this case, it is, I'll spoil this one slightly, this is a comedian saying essentially a one-liner. And so as the solver is solving the puzzle, they are discovering the quote. So how do they solve the puzzle? Obviously, the clue quote does not give you much indication of how to proceed to fill in the top of this puzzle. So usually you start by filling in the bottom of the puzzle. So as you can see here, we have 10 entries here, about 7 to 8 letters in length. We have one 4-letter entry here. What happens is as you fill in the letters on the bottom, corresponding letters get filled in on the top. Now, one thing you don't usually notice as you're solving this digitally, like on this website, is that the same number fills in the same number up top. So you can see that this space is small, but this space is number 32. Number 32 is highlighted up here. Up here, it even has an A saying that this space comes from word A. This is basically irrelevant information if you're solving this online, but if you happen to be solving this on paper, it's convenient because you say, okay, I've just put in word A, number 32. I know I have to look for number 32 in the grid. These are all numbered sequentially up here, so it's relatively easy to find. You also know that it comes from A, so if you filled it in up here, you would know that you could put that letter down here. So the way you solve these is you work back and forth from, let's say you knew this one, right? Acoustic phenomenon leveraged by bats. Again, I don't want to spoil this entire puzzle in case you haven't done it, but let's say you know that that's an echo. It's an acoustic phenomenon leveraged by bats. All right. So now it fills in automatically the E, C, and HO up top. Let's say you had to guess, you think this word is that. All right. So if you fill in THAT, that fills in some letters down below. And you could sort of work back and forth using the top and the bottom to fill in the entire puzzle. All right, so why is it called an acrostic? Well, remember what I said earlier about the acrostic poem, where the acrostic poem is several lines where the first letters spell out something. Well, in this case, it is the first letters of the entries down here, as Crossweird TV calls it, the downstairs. These first letters will spell out the source of the quote. In this case, it is just the author of the quote, but sometimes it is both the author and, say, the work it comes from. So if it was a book, it would be the book. If it was a web page, it could be the web page, etc. All right, so let's think about what the process is for making one of these. I would say the first step is coming up with a quote. That seems important. When you come up with a quote, it can be just about any size you want, but you have to keep in mind two restrictions. One is that the source of the quote has to be contained within the quote, right? So again, this particular acrostic puzzle, the first letters here are spelling out the author of the quote, right? But every first letter here, like if this is a B, that first letter has to be inside the quote. So that's the one thing. The second thing is that it can't be too long or too short. So what do I mean by that? Chiara Vasquez came to me with an idea for an acrostic that was by Brian Eno. It was a great quote. It would have worked really well. All the letters for Brian Eno were contained in there. But Brian Eno is only 8 letters long. And if you think about it, if you have a quote that's, let's say, 240 characters, right? And the source is Brian Eno, that's going to be on average 30 letters per entry down here, right? Because again, the number of words down here is constrained by the number of letters in your source. If your source is just Brian Eno, that's 8. And so you're only going to have 8 entries. And so, yeah, with a 240 character quote, there's just no way we're going to find something with 30 characters apiece. I try to shoot for an average of about 9 to 10 letters per word in the downstairs. I find that that makes the most fun entries, but this one's like a 7 or 8. The New York Times basically always has 7 to 8 characters per downstairs entry. So, you know, there's a lot of flexibility there, a lot of flexibility. Once we have our quote and our source, we head over to the Acrostic Generator. It's real simple. It looks like all my other simple websites where it's just, you know, you give the inputs and you click the button to create an acrostic. Let's actually find a real quote. So generally what I would do is go to a Brainy Quote or some website like this. Let's look up Dorothy Parker. She's not here. Dorothy Parker. Beauty's only skin deep, but ugly goes clean to the bone. Do you want to know what God thinks of money? Just look at the people he gave it to. Oh, that's a good one. I'd like to have money, and I'd like to be a good writer. These two can come together, and I hope they will, but if that's too adorable, I'd rather have money. I think this is a great one. One nice thing about the Acrostic Generator is that it will tell you if you can't do it. How long is this one? This is 128 characters. Let's say 124 or something like that. Dorothy Parker's 13, so it's a little less than 10. This is actually pretty good. This is about right, I think. So let's try this. So we have our quote. We have our source, which is fully contained in the quote. On average, we're going to have about 10 letters, I think, per entry, which is pretty dang good. Okay, let's see what we got let's see what it spit out at the first take. Here's what I generally do with this, because that first take gave us a couple good fill, right? Gave us some good fill. So there's essentially 3 categories here, right? There's the fill we definitely don't want to include, and we'll put those in the word to exclude. There's fill we would ideally like to include here, like some of these might be really good, right? So let's include yoga mat and rowboat. Let's do a second take with just this. We'll take out David Diamond, I'm sorry friend. We'll take out rowing boat. We'll leave yoga mat, rowboat, and oh shit. See what pops up. Now we come to the next phase, which is writing the clues. So you could download the APZ if you want and edit everything in text, but I think this is not really 100% necessary anymore. We go over here. Jeff Davidson made this, and it's a wonderful resource for all sorts of different variety puzzles. We, of course, are going to do the acrostic ones. So we need to come up with some stuff. Put in the creator, put in the copyright, put in the solution. Grid key we're not going to put in. We are going to put in clues. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to copy our results, and I'm going to put them here, and we'll come up with clues for those. And answers. Completion message. Traditionally, in an acrostic puzzle, the completion message is the source followed by the quote. Okay, wonderful. So now all that's left to do is to write the clues. Yeah, I think this is pretty good. All right, so let's talk about the next step. Jeff's site, pretty easy to use. We got the completion message. We got the answers. Oh, did we ever come up with a title? We need a title. What's this puzzle going to be called? So we've got a title, we've got a creator, we've got a copyright, we've got a solution. We don't have a grid key. You don't need it. Don't ever use that. We got clues, we got answers. Do I have all the correct enumerations and everything in here? I think so. All right, let's do it. So what I'm going to do, what I'd like to do is I'd like to not Should we include the attribution as a separate entry? So I think we might want to with this puzzle. This one's fairly short. I think we can do that. What this does, and I'll show the resulting file afterwards. What this does is it, remember at the beginning I was saying that the first letters of the entries are going to spell out Dorothy Parker. This gives you a separate line to make that very clear. I think this puzzle is short enough that we can do that, so let's just go ahead and do that. All right, and I'm not going to compress the JPZ file in case you want to edit it later. All right, generate JPZ, I'm going to save it. Okay, and now let's go ahead and see what it looks like. So if we go to Crossword Nexus, that is the wrong, typed in the wrong thing. It's like I've never used my website before. We can open up the JPZ we just created. There it is. So now, here's where it's going to spell out Dorothy Parker. It's called attribution in here. It's a separate entry. This is actually perfect. We didn't tell it to do this, but take a look at this. There's 7 entries over here. That's going to spell out Dorothy. There's 6 entries over here. That's going to spell out Parker. Love it. Yeah, and the quote's up here. It's a nice length. This puzzle looks really good. I think we did great. So we've got a JPZ file because we created it from the Cotword site, and I'm going to post it somewhere so that y'all can see that you did a great job with that. There's also this other website that you may have heard of, Crossword Nexus. And it allows you to embed puzzles on your own site. So we can do that here. We can upload a PUZ or a JPZ. In our case, we have a JPZ. By the way, I think this will actually work with CFP files too. Is this totally broken? Oh no, there we go. I'm going to choose stacks on stacks on stacks. I'm going to submit. It's going to say, hey, look at this. You can do this on your own site. This is absolutely blatant self-promotion. But you know what? Sometimes you need to. You copy that, you put that in your own site. But you know what? I think we did something pretty good here. I really appreciate you all hanging out.